address a few questions if you have them, but I'll start.
I thought you were going to say a few envelopes.
A few envelopes, that's good. That's the way I started, you know.
Doing luminosity.
Yes.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, we have. She's referring to the fact that we do now a brain program, which you play games that are supposed to exercise different parts of your brain. And we actually have found it very helpful because it's got us completely addicted to playing video games. And we rationalize it by saying, oh yeah, I'm working on brain improvement. So,
Is that the lumosity?
yeah,
Yeah,
lumosity. So it's actually been fun. While we were at dinner, I was asked the question, which I promised to address publicly also. Someone was saying that they were having the difficulty with comparing themselves to other people, and that it's almost like a constant habit, and how could he overcome it? And the question gets broader than that, because we all have certain patterns of behavior that we would prefer to get finished. And so, there's always, for devotees, a little bit of a sense of struggle of trying to improve. But it's really a very cosmic energy, because think about it, from the very point at which we come in to manifestation, and Master said that's the mineral kingdom. He said he remembered the point at which he was a diamond. I've always laughed and said I was a lump of coal. But all the way back to the mineral kingdom. And so if the soul is there in the mineral kingdom, there has to be a driving force that moves it to evolve from there. And so that driving force gets translated into us as we become more and more conscious, as we always want something more. We always want something better. As Master said, we always are striving for happiness and trying to avoid pain. And so that internal drive, always striving for happiness and always wanting something more, it's down even beyond our genetic roots. I don't think mineral kingdom has genetic roots. That's later on. That's at least until you get into the plant kingdom, and then there's the animal kingdom, and then the human kingdom beyond that. But there's always that movement, that cosmic evolutionary movement of wanting something more. Well, by the time we get into the life of a devotee, that wanting something more begins more and more to get translated into, we want changes of consciousness, because we've gone through enough experiences. Master said that life takes on an anguishing monotony. So we've gone through enough experiences wanting something more and thinking that something is going to stop this desire for something more, but that something that we're after is outside of ourselves. So it's like having an itch in the esophagus deep inside and thinking that we can stop that itch by scratching on the surface. And nothing on the surface, nothing outside of ourselves is ever going to stop that desire for something more. And so this got translated for this particular question into the desire to overcome the habit of comparing himself to other people, because that's causing discomfort. And so here, that wanting something more is that, but each of us has not just one, we have multiple things of wanting something more. But what we want more, what we define as what will make us happy, that is the more interesting question. Because, way back when, in previous incarnations, the more that we wanted was maybe to move up in the gangland kingdom, because we thought that power or security or who knows what unsavory thing lies in our past, that we thought that something more was going to make us happy. So we always have like a spectrum, and one end of the spectrum is those things in our behavior and memory patterns that seem familiar and is a behavior pattern or desire pattern that relatively recently still worked for us. And so that's the caboose of our train. Anandamoy Ma said that it's as if our karma puts all of us on a train, and we have no choice about where that train is going. We have no choice about the route that it's taking. The only choice that we have is whether we move to the front of that train or move to the back of it. And so our karmic patterns control almost everything. But the questions that arise in our mind, like how can I overcome the tendency to compare myself to others, that's the question that is the spectrum on the train that we're working with. And other things have fallen way, way back, and we don't even remember them. For instance, we don't even think anymore that maybe going out and, going to a bar and getting drunk is going to lead to our happiness. That's all fallen away, and it never even enters. So that's beyond the caboose. That's an old train that we've left behind. But we do have some train, some spectrum that we're working with now. Master said that our thoughts are universally, not individually rooted, and he compared the mind to a radio. And so you have a radio, and it's got all the stations on it. And what those stations are is actually different wavelengths of vibration, and that different wavelengths has a different program coming. And so you can choose a wavelength. For me, that's way down at the bottom left side area. That's kind of violent rap music, or I don't know. I have certain, let's say, disinclinations toward very egoic talk show hosts. And so for me, that's way down on the left side of the dial down there. And so, but whatever we tune into, that's the programming that we're going to be receiving, and then we kind of individualize that programming a little bit, kind of like, I don't know, cosmic karaoke or something. We add our own little bit to it. But basically, the spectrum of possibilities is karmically determined, but the desire for moving forward is something that is innate in all of creation. Even a diamond has something in it that impels it to move forward. And so we're going to move forward. So the question is not whether we want something or not. The real question is, what is it that we want? And it's really our aspirations that determine us. Because Anandamoy Ma put it this way, that the desire for God is a very high desire, and every desire has to be fulfilled. That's the law of the universe. So once we have the desire for God, that has to be fulfilled. And somebody said, well, isn't that just another desire? And she said, yes, it is. Except with this difference. It is the one desire that ends all other desires. So that kind of impelling to be kind of have the end game in mind is driving us forward. But each of us has, one could say, a little grouping of questions that we're working on. In this case, the tendency to compare. For another person, it might be, I don't know, the tendency to be self-honest. For another person, trying to overcome the tendency to be lethargic or tamasic or lazy. Everybody has a few things that we're working on, but what's most important is to keep alive our aspiration, because what has happened in the past, we have no control over. What is going to be the result in the future, we don't have very much control over. We live only in the present. We only have this moment. But the aspirations and the directional flow of energy that is there in this moment is what will determine the future moments. So, don't worry about the past. You can't do anything about it. You can't do anything about the future because it's out of your control, but you can influence the future by what you do now, and that's the whole of the spiritual path. That's why we have the practices and the attitudes and everything that's been given to us, because that helps us tune the radio station of our minds to a higher programming, and that higher programming is going to lead us toward something more that finally ends the desire, because the desire is never in the world or never outside of us. It is a desire that resides in consciousness, and it's only when we finally get to the point where we try to scratch that itch in consciousness that it is possible to affect it at all. So we're all working on something or some things, and that's just the drama of life and the drama of devotees. But what an incredible blessing to be in a group of supportive people who are accepting and encouraging and supportive to that process of self-transformation. And it's, aside from the grace and the blessing of having a true teacher, a true master, a guru, and the true teachings, the company of other truth seekers is this next greatest blessing. And golly, we got them both.
Well, I don't want to talk on the same subject because then I would be comparing myself to Jyotish.
He's more reserved than you are.
Yeah.
But I remember, you may have heard this story, but it's funny. Maybe 10 years ago or less, Swamiji set a very high goal for all of us. He said, I want you all to work in this lifetime to really make spiritual progress, and I want you to try to achieve the state. There's a Indian term, Jivan Mukta, which means freed while living. And so that seemed like a pretty tall order to me. And I was talking with Jyotish, and I said, I don't know if I'm on that level, that I could do that. And he just looked at me and he said, and this is good advice to all of us when you kind of think, I don't know how far I can go. And I don't meditate as much as somebody else. I don't serve as much. I don't think about God as much. I'm not as good enough person. And Jyotish said, so I said, I don't think I can achieve that in this lifetime. And he looked at me and he said, you'd better expect it, but then have plan B. So then we were up in Seattle, and we were giving a Sunday service or something, and I spoke first, and I told that story, and then Jyotish stood up and he...
I'll deliver the line. So the story had been told like 10 minutes earlier. And I got up to address my part, and I said, some of you may not know me. I'm Plan B.
So explain Plan B how it works.
Takes too long.
Good answer.
But I also remember a dear friend who, he's not here right now, but I remember he lives here in the Portland community. And some years ago he was saying, well, you know, I liked his attitude a lot, and I've shared this story with others. He said, you know, I may not be the best devotee. I probably don't meditate as much as I should or do any of the things I know I should be doing. In fact, I may be the very last one in the race. But you know what? I'm still running. And I just thought, good for you. Good for you. It doesn't matter if you're the last one in the race. We're all going to get there. I remember many years ago, a group of us went to Hawaii with Swamiji. And there happened to be a marathon on the island of Kauai while we were there. And some of the people were very good, and a marathon and a half marathon. And so some of the people that were with us were very good runners. And then some of us had a lot of enthusiasm. And so Vidura actually won the his age division for the half marathon.
Go for the marathon.
Oh, was it the marathon? Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and Durga and I were running the half, I can't say we were running, but we were in the half marathon. We were at the very end. And the only people behind us was this very old lady who had a chihuahua. And then there was this Japanese man who was, I think he said he was 78. And then he sort of ran with us for a little while, and he said, I like running with you young girls. You give me a lot of energy. But then he faded back. So anyway, we did finish. Anyway, we were at the end of the race, but we finished. And that's important. I'll just share a little bit. Someone, in fact, it was Dambara, asked us today when we were driving back from somewhere. He said, how can you help our congregation get a better feeling about, particularly newer members, about what our work is here? What's the work of a nun? And I said, well, we're not like a regular church where I joined this church. You okay, Bob? Good girl. You're a member of the church, and it's not joining in that same way that it's like an enclosed circle. Ananda is center everywhere, as Master said, circumference nowhere. And so that's a helpful thing when we're trying to be a part of our spiritual work, we're working with new people, just to create that feeling of openness and inclusiveness. The person who just walks in the door is just as important as the person who's on the board of directors or whatever. And I always love something Master said, actually. He said, who's the most important person in our work? It could be a name on the mailing list that nobody even knows. But their love for God may be so great that they're the one that is like, here we're comparing again, aren't we? But that could be the most important person. So to make everyone feel that this is an open, expanding circle, that we are here in this community, in Laurelwood, the Institute, the Temple and Teaching Center. We're there not because we need something from them, but because we want to serve them. Everybody who walks in the door needs to feel special and cared about, and that we were happy they came, and that this is part of something that's, so people often would ask Swamiji, and when you listen to his talks, it's something he says over and over again. He said, I am not here to convert you to anything but your own higher self. And so And one final thought, and then we can have some questions. Once we went into Earth Song. It was a health food restaurant and store that Ananda ran. We went in with Swamiji, and the people, our Ananda people worked in the restaurant and in the store, and they were, we thought, oh, this was lovely. Everyone was so nice and friendly. And afterwards, Swami went up to them and he said, "You're doing a good job, but you're being friends on a personality level. You need to be friends on a divine level." And that was a very interesting correction. I didn't even pick that up at all. But what he was saying is, it's good to be kind and friendly, but if you never relate past the personality, then you're not really conveying everything that we have. So how do you do that? Try to relate from your own center of calmness and peace and love for God to the highest center in the other person, not just personality or superficial distinctions. But that's another important part of what the work is that we're doing, to create a new expression of friendship in God. We've often heard guests at the retreat, the Expanding Light. We would have a little questionnaire and asking what was your favorite part of your stay here. And we thought the classes or the natural environment or the meals or whatever it would be. Many, many people wrote their favorite part of their stay was watching the kind of friendship between the staff. And that was really a beautiful statement. To really, they saw a kind of a nonverbal communication, an understanding of who needed to do what without having to talk about it, a kindness to each other, a joy in each other's presence, a joy that doesn't have to even be communicated through words. So this quality of divine friendship in our communities here, everywhere, in the way we serve other people, this is something people don't know. I mean, they know love of friends and family on a human level, but on an impersonal level, I am your friend not because, we went to college together or whatever, or because you're my cousin and we used to go to family picnics together. I'm your friend because my soul honors and projects love to your soul, not for no other reason than I feel God. I am happiest when I feel God's love flowing through me to other people. So all these are things to bear in mind as our work expands here in Portland and Laurelwood, and new people come to the schools and the temple and the businesses and everything we do. So we've been so really happy to spend this time with you. It's been a joy. Many of you are very long, have known you for a long time, for years. Some of you we haven't met yet, but we're all joined in this community in God and glory. And we're so really, really gratified to see the spirit of spiritual community, divine friendship, and service that's really flourishing everywhere we've been. So thank you and Devi and Gangamata have just been just gracious and kind beyond anything we can express. So thank you both for that.
I want to know why you rode the maps.
Because we wanted to.
That's what I thought.
She wanted to know why we rode the Max in from the airport. Because we love trains. And it was an adventure, and we were going to have to learn something new, how to buy the tickets, and where you get on.
So did you sit in the front or the back of the train?
Well, yeah, Jyotish has to tell you what he said, though, on the train. He sat in the middle.
Yeah, we sat where we were introduced to the door.
Because we had all our suitcases.
Yeah.
But speaking of sitting on the train, periodically announcements came on, and one of them said, you must move for a senior citizen.
If a senior citizen requests, you must move.
And so I said, Davy, wiggle a little bit. She's like, what? I said, well, I'm a senior citizen. I want you to move. Next year it'll be 40 years that she's had to put up with this stuff.
And that's how Plan B works.
That's how Plan B works, yeah. Yeah. So now she's got the choice. Do I repeat this again next time? Or I better really work to get out. Motivations become a jivan. Yeah.
But we're gonna have, next year will be our 40th wedding anniversary, and we're gonna have a big celebration in the community. We're coming back early from, we'll be over in India, but we'll come back to celebrate it because, not just for us, but you know, it's important to celebrate things like that. You know, just the kind of, our lives are so intricately interwoven with the life of Ananda and so forth. And so I think it's something we can all share. Four fingers?
No. I was just wondering if history of Ananda.
Yes. Well, that is, we're gonna. That'll be 2019, and because we go by 69, we're gonna dedicate the new temple. We're gonna start fundraising for it in about a year and a half, and it'll go under construction. So we'll have big celebrations, but that'll be the big. Finally, we've always put it off and, you know, help support the work in India, help support the work in Assisi, different projects that have come up all along the way. So we've never built a big temple there. So we're going to start fundraising, and in 2019, we're going to dedicate the new temple.
And in 2020 is the 100th anniversary of Master coming to America. So that'll be a big deal too. So, get ready, guys.
Will the temple be by the expanding light?
Yes.
Yes, it'll be in the, for those of you who know Ananda Village, in Expanding Light, the big meadow out there. It'll be over toward the tree line.
They're gonna have a roof like Seattle?
Yeah.
It'll be, yeah,
Temple of
Exactly.
Life, yeah.
it'll be like
That'll be
Seattle.
a landmark for
Yeah,
people to
a
go see
landmark.
up in North San Juan.
But, you know, when we were, some years ago, when we went to Florence, we were in the beautiful basilica there. And Italy at a certain point was just all these competitive city-states. And so there are markers on the floor in the basilica in Florence. The basilica in Milan only comes this far. The basilica in Rome only comes this far. And so the temple at Ananda will be bigger than
Not to compare.
You want to share with people our newly discovered ability to ship devotees to Siberia?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Anyone who really, doesn't carry their weight gets shipped to Siberia. No,
We have devotees?
we have devotees in Siberia. Last weekend, there was the first Kriya retreat in Siberia. Wow.
And
we have a
Ananda's
retreat center.
first center in Russia is in Siberia. So,
That's really cool.
And Siberia is what it seems like. Yeah, Dharmadas and Nirmala went, and they said in the summer it's actually pleasant. Well, part of it was in, but it was also St. Petersburg. That's where it started.
In Russia?
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know much about that.
Well, so is Portland.
Yes.
Pleasant in the summer.
One time we were visiting Seattle some years ago, and I said to Uma, was up there to come, I said, Uma, it was a sunny day. I said, we've never been here in the summer before. She said, you come every year in the summer. It's just never sunny.
It's not true, but one of the California ministers who came up, it was actually Parvati, so this was a lot of years ago. She came down with a T-shirt that she had gotten at some street fair that said, Portland Rain Festival, January 1st to December 31st.
soon we're gonna have a center in Beijing too.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Beijing.
Yeah.
So if any of you have any odd linguistic skills.
Or Chinese samskars. Well, we've been promised movement and music and dance and nice entertainment.
Wow, who told you that?
Not instant, but suggestions for those of us who work far and wide in businesses around the area in terms of what would help us to stay on the path. You know, some of us have demanding jobs that take us kind of through the zigzags and all that stuff. I do mantras as much as I can remember.
Good. You know, when we get busy, it's funny, the pull of the world, but it's so easy to say, oh, you know, I've got to rush. I don't have time to meditate. I have to do the, you know, take out the trash. I have to, you know, do the laundry before I go and blah, blah, blah. And oh, I've not got 10 minutes to meditate. Don't let your meditation go. No matter, you know, it's something I'm learning in my life. The more busy my life gets, the more I make my period of meditation inviolate. You know, I just say, no, I will structure everything around that, but I'm not giving up that. And that really, I can't stress enough the importance that it makes. Just because it's so easy to say, you know, let everything else impede on that time. And we pay the price, and little by little, that meditation becomes a faint, pleasant memory. And we all do. Don't compare.
Swami had a very, it's a beautiful story. We had, when we started the San Francisco ashram, we started a bookstore and restaurant. And the woman who was managing it was a single woman, and she always had to close up at night. And the only way, because the place was on the opposite side of town, the only way she could come home would be to take the bus. And so she would take the bus, and it was often 11:30, even midnight. And so she would get on this bus, and the particular bus that came to where the ashram was went through the worst parts of San Francisco. And it made her afraid. It just was a very unpleasant thing for her. And so she came to Swamiji with the dilemma of, what do I do? And he said, well, can you drive? And she said, no, I can't drive. And he said, well, can somebody pick you up? She said, that isn't really feasible. He said, well, if there's no choice except to take the bus, then this is what you should do. When you get on the bus, pick one person, the person who you look and see is the most needful of it, and pray for that person the entire trip. And if that person gets off the bus, then pick another one and pray for them.
But what we're talking about are, you know, drug addicts and, you know, people just ranting, raving, not just somebody who might be really poor.
So, you know, it was a hard test for her. But after 2 weeks, she came back to Swamiji, and she said, the bus ride home is now my favorite part of the day. And so, in your work, pick somebody and treat that one person as if you're serving God, because you won't be able to remember probably to do it for everybody. But if you focalize it and pick one, I think it could help transform your experience.
You know, another thought that just occurred to me, because I just looking at you all, probably about a third to a half of you have outside jobs. Why don't you start either like a Facebook page together or some kind of a link where devotees who have jobs in the world, and you just kind of add tips, you know, just like, oh, you know, today at my lunch hour I went and I meditated in a nearby church, but make it a support group and just keep feeding ideas, and that could be a big thing. I mean, you know, there were two wonderful young girls who grew up in Ananda, and then they went away to college, and they both had received Kriya already, and they were different colleges across the country, and they were living in dormitories, and it just wasn't the environment they were used to, a lot of partying and noise, and so they would call each other every night, did you do your Kriya? Yeah, I did my Kriya, okay, and that just got them through that time. And so really look at
A support group would be wonderful,
Yeah.
and be a nice service to other devotees
Or
too.
maybe just a meeting.
One time I worked nights, and so one time I thought I'd join San Juan, or however you say his name, in a meditation in the morning.
Sanjan. Yeah.
Yeah, not a good thought.
Oh,
No,
Right.
because you're tired.
Oh, you fell
Oh.
asleep, yeah.
I thought, oh, this will be good. You know, it's
Uh-huh.
quiet, and
Yeah.
I've got my computer. I
Right.
can use
Yeah.
that. It didn't work.
yeah.
So I find too, I can't really meditate when I'm supposed to be. Well, I could, but I'm watching a respirator and things like that.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
very quiet, and there's
Right.
just
Right.
But it's difficult when you're working nights, and then when you come home to sleep during the day, it's difficult. So I
Yeah.
really have to force
Yeah.
myself to find a time.
You're bringing up an important point, though. We have to work with our own rhythms and what works for us. We can't successfully kind of import something that doesn't feel like it will work for us. That we're kind of, it's enough of a battle to fight against Maya. You don't have to fight against your own resistance for certain things all the time. Find things that work for you and keep working with them, and don't worry too much about the other parts. As the old song goes, accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between.
4th of July.
Oh, good.
With Uma.
Oh, great. Well, some people are getting chilly.